Now, I want to talk about some other things as well, what I call some of the other gut bombs. So we'll move that out of the way a little bit, and let's pull this up. So we just kind of talked a little bit about the medications, right? Other gut bombs. Now, this is not, I don't want you to think that this is me telling you not to take the medicines that your doctor's prescribing. This is not medical advice in that way. This should always be a conversation between you and your doc. But it should be a conversation, right? You shouldn't just say, oh, I'm going to be on this medicine and you know, be damned the consequences of potentially taking it. With any medicine, there's what's known as a risk-benefit ratio. And that's the conversation you want to have. And so anytime a doctor wants to prescribe you medicine, your first question should be, okay, great. What are the benefits of using this medicine? And the doctor can give you a kind of a breakdown of what those are. And what are the risks? What are the side effects? What are the potential nutritional depleting effects of the medication that I'm about to potentially maybe go on? And when you can have both of these, then you are now in a place where you can make an informed decision, as opposed to just saying, okay, let's take out the risk and let's only talk about the benefit. That's really only talking about half the problem, right? So you don't want to do that. Oops. You want to have all the information that you need in order to be able to talk about whether or not it's something that you want to do. So risk benefit's important to have that conversation around medicine. Additionally, processed foods. Now let's pull this over just a little bit. Processed food. This is a big one, because we know that so many of the different agents that are used to process and preserve the food, research actually shows us that food additives are one of the reasons why we're seeing an increased overall gluten sensitivity issue, right? So processed additives in the food themselves. So one of the big ones is meat glue. And I did a whole show on meat glue. You can go back to the archives and you can check that out. But meat glue, which is another name for microbial transglutaminase, which is a bacterial slime that sometimes is added to change the texture or the shelf life of foods. And we've got, you know, dyes and other preservatives, synthetic flavoring agents, you know, all those things we know can affect the GI tract in a negative way. They can damage the GI tract. And so even though these things are what are known as GRAS, generally recognized as safe. So, you know, years ago, the government came out with a list of food additives and food items that were added to foods and said, if it's been around, we're going to grandfather it in. So if it's been around for any great length of time, we're going to just throw it under this category umbrella of generally recognized as safe. But what you have to understand is that we've got 30,000 new chemicals that have been added to the diet really since the 80s. So what food manufacturers have done is they've taken the liberty of creating 30,000 new things that you're now being exposed to through your food consumption. Actually, 30,000 through your environmental consumption. I think it's more like 6,000 through your food. But when you combine 6,000 chemicals, there's something in science and biology called synergy. That means one chemical might be okay. Your body might be strong enough to handle the effects of one food additive or processed food thing. But now you put 10 together. It's not 1 + 1 + 1 ... equals 10. It's 1 × 2 × 3, and you get this synergistic effect of potential negative consequences. And this is really what we're seeing in today's world, is we're seeing the mass onslaught of chemical exposures combined with poor diets, poor lifestyles, poor habits, that's really leading to a lot of the gastrointestinal damage. Celiac disease aside, whether you have celiac disease or not, or whether you're gluten sensitive or not, it's all of these additives and chemicals that are creating a huge disruption of the gut way the gut functions, of the gut microbiome, etc. So these guys right here, big food bombs. I would just say, I really wish around processed food we'd had informed consent, meaning that the restaurants would have to give you, just like the doctors, before you go have a surgery, they give you this 10-page packet of paperwork that says these are all the potential side effects that you might have if you go through with this procedure. To me, it would be great if restaurants would have the same type of thing, informed consent to be exposed to processed food chemicals and food additives. These are all the diseases that we know are linked to you eating these things. simultaneously. The processed food is a big gut bomb, right? Big gut bomb that, in my opinion, this is why you want to buy real food and you want to buy organic. And then the other gut bomb here that we haven't really talked about much tonight anyways, herbicides, pesticides, chemicals that are sprayed on our food when we're growing it to kill bugs or to kill weeds, etc. And so probably on most of your lips right now is that chemical. There was just a lawsuit on this. I think it was, the owners of Glyphosate were ordered to pay, I think it was a $10 billion payout because it was proven in a court case that they lied about the danger of this chemical Roundup. And they knew it was potentially a carcinogen, and they ignored that, and they hid that information. And so the gentleman that sued them won, and they were ordered to pay $10 billion. And a big chunk of that $10 billion is supposed to go to research on the safety of glyphosate and other chemical additives or pesticide, herbicides, etc. So we know that the company that produces this is responsible for murder. Take that how you will. They're responsible for the very least of causing cancer in individuals, and they're responsible for lying about it. So we know that they're neglectful, and we know that only through the court case of law were they actually held accountable. Well, understand that this same company, the same producer that manufactures this is Bayer, right? Bayer is a company. They also produce a lot of your prescription drugs, so your RX meds. So the same company that's lying about poisoning you with food is also responsible for providing medicines that are supposed to treat you and potentially help save your life. Now, you get to make your own call and your own decisions there, but that seems like a fox in the henhouse to me. That seems like a pretty big deal, a pretty big, we'll just say, conflict of interest and leave it at that. But I wanted to show you this diagram. So this is coming out of the journal Interdisciplinaries, and what we've got here is from 1990, and this is over to 2010, is we have the incidence of glyphosate, of spraying glyphosate on wheat. In essence, how much glyphosate are we using, right? Compared to the incidence of celiac diagnosis. Okay, and so you can see this curve, it goes up. It goes up pretty rapidly as more glyphosate's being used. We see a greater degree of celiac disease diagnoses. Now, many of you might say, and I don't disagree, that correlation of two things together does not equal causation, and that's true. But when we see a diagram like this, it definitely merits better study. So we need to research this in a much greater degree, especially in light of the fact that we know they lied about its danger. We've been being sold propaganda in commercials about how safe glyphosate is, and how if you ban the use of glyphosate, that your food grocery bill will double and triple. Like the company that's responsible for producing this stuff puts together major media campaigns and spends millions and millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars, to basically tell you that if you get rid of this chemical, that somehow your grocery bill is going to increase. I would say that's fine. I'll pay more for groceries, increase groceries to reduce my medical bill. Because if I increase my grocery bill, that gives me a better quality of life. And now I can live, I can function, I can be healthy. If I am increasing, if we do the opposite, so if we do, a reduction in grocery with an increase in medical, I know many of you have heard the saying that your health is priceless, right? So how many of you would rather have this exchange over this exchange? Hopefully nobody raises their hand for this side. So buying cheap food that kills you as a slow poison over time right? And leads to increased medical expenditures and reduction in quality of life and potentially more medical interventions versus just having the garbage out of your food, right? When did it become so crazy that we could add chemicals and preservatives and additives to our food, and it's cheaper to do all that than it is to just grow and eat real food? To me, it's kind of the opposite of what it should be, which is unfortunate. But my advice is you've got to understand that glyphosate as a whole has been shown to create a lot of problems. I've got more details on the blog. We can put the link up, with the show notes. If you want to go back and read a lot of the research that I'm talking about tonight and look at some of the science and thumb through some of that, we've got all that information on the Gluten-Free Society blog for you where you can go check that out. We'll post a link to it as well. But to me, it just makes better sense to eat real food, reduce your medical footprint, forget about your carbon footprint, reduce your medical footprint, because, here's the reality too. I'm going to harp now. When you choose this, when you choose to eat garbage, what you're choosing is an increased medical footprint, and you now are relying in the United States and in other countries, but now that socialized medicine is here, you're relying on others to pay for your negligence. And what I'm referring to here, I'm not referring to somebody who, if you're talking about socialized medicine for a car accident, you're you got a major injury and your bills got taken care of. But I'm talking about the vast majority of medical conditions in this country that kill the vast majority of people. Cancer, heart disease, autoimmune disease, diabetes, obesity. These are the things where you're increasing your medical footprint by choosing to buy cheap food. And so then what you're basically doing is you're deferring your responsibility away from yourself, and you're depending on your fellow citizens to pay for your own negligence. Now imagine if somebody came into your life, right, and said, hey, we're going to just take your money and we're going to pay for this other person over here who's doing self-harm so that they can keep doing that self-harm. What kind of sense does that make? What kind of sense does it make to put a system in place that pays for care, that allows people to continue to maintain their blissful ignorance around the topic of diet and nutrition? And it makes zero sense to me. So you guys, I'm just empowering you with this information so that you can go out and live it, live by it, become the example, the walking examples of it, so that you can spread it. Because at the end of the day, what are we trying to do? We're trying to save lives, right? And so you know the drill. Hashtag save 100 million lives is what we're trying to do. And the only way we're going to do that is we have to bust this out of the water. We've got to hold these people accountable. $10 billion as a fine is not enough. That's a criminal offense. To lie about whether or not your product causes cancer in any other industry, you would be thrown in prison, and the key would probably be thrown out of the window, and you'd probably be stuck there for the rest of your life. But as it relates to some of these big corporate conglomerations who just pay fines to cover up for their neglect and their direct, bold lies about how their products are very dangerous and can kill people, that to me, that needs to be addressed. So the only way we're going to do that is if enough of you are getting mad about it, if enough of you are overwhelmed by the neglect that's going on in our food industry, and actually start taking action. And the first way to take action is to improve your own health. Once you become healthy yourself, then you can become a walking spokesperson for this method and for this methodology. Hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below. And as always, thanks for tuning in.